So we're here at Consensus. On day one of the conference, you announced that you're investing another $25 million into Fairshake. This is a pro-crypto PAC, and it's also on top of the $25 million that you gave them last year. Walk me through how you chose Fairshake and how this investment helps build towards your larger thesis.
Look, it's incredibly important that the U.S. is competitive when it comes to the policy and regulatory environment in all things crypto. That's not where we have been, unfortunately. We've really had a pretty hostile regulatory environment in lots and lots of ways. And instead of doing the work to provide clarity and clear rules of the road, we've actually, I think in some ways, the SEC under Gensler has sowed confusion by filing lawsuits that sometimes even contradict each other. So for me, like supporting Fairshake even more and even signaling that we're going to continue to do this, it's really about getting people elected who are pro-crypto, pro-innovation, but also are focused on protecting consumers. We think by getting that right mix, we're really moving the whole agenda forward and catching up with what we've already seen in other economies around the world.
So later today, RFK will be speaking. He's at virtually every event I go to. Meanwhile, you had Trump speaking at the Libertarian National Convention this past weekend in DC, saying very pro-crypto things. He's become more of the crypto candidate. Meanwhile, you've got Biden apparently softening his stance on crypto. At least that's a perception among those in the sector. It seems like crypto is more a part of the conversation than it's ever been before in this presidential election cycle. Any thoughts on that dynamic?
I mean, look, it's a magical time to be alive as part of my reaction to that. 10 years ago when I first really got deeply involved in crypto, I couldn't have predicted kind of what we're seeing today. But it's also, I feel like, the inevitable march of progress. These technologies can improve so many ways in which transactions are settled, more transparency, more, faster, cheaper. And so to me, it's that forward progress. The fact that we have what should have been a bipartisan, broadly supported technology, somehow it became partisan. I really attribute that. Elizabeth Warren in particular kind of stood out and spoke, I think, misinformation and saying like, well, everybody doing crypto is doing bad things. And just nothing can be further from the truth. There's so many examples even here at this conference of incredible entrepreneurs building incredible tools that can improve the efficiency of how financial transactions work. And look, some of our financial system was developed 50, 60 years ago. It's time to bring it into the internet age for the benefit of consumers, for the benefit of businesses. And to fight that progression, that inevitable march of progression, to fight that, I think, is just silly. So I do think seeing it become a presidential topic, isn't that surprising to me? There's a lot of passion. I'm sure you felt it here as well. There's a lot of passionate people about this industry, and they will vote their mind. And I think that's important.
Well, and there are a lot of polls that are indicating just that crypto is increasingly an issue that they care about. Voters in swing states are expressing more of an interest in the digital asset sector than before. We're also seeing a lot of pro-crypto legislation wind its way through Congress. So SAB 121 a couple of weeks ago, FIT 21 passing the House last week, seeing more Democratic support for these laws. Stablecoin legislation, people are more bullish on that than they have been in past years. But do we see these things get to the finish line, signed into law by the end of the year? How optimistic are you?
If you were to ask me whether they get signed into law before the end of the year, I'm probably a little bit skeptical that it happens before the election. As we all have seen, the wheels of legislative progress move slowly and carefully. So I'm thrilled by the progress that we made in the last even 3 weeks. And I think it may have been the most important 2 or 3 weeks in the U.S. crypto evolution ever. But I still think getting the legislation passed may require, after the election, maybe before the end of the year, more likely the first half of next year. But again, I view this as very, very positive because the winds have changed in how the U.S. government is looking at this. And we haven't yet seen explicit decisions from the Biden administration, but you have seen, as you described earlier, a softening of some of the rhetoric coming out of this administration. And I think driven by the fact that people understand this is a topic people care deeply about, and frankly, the fact that it's become a little bit partisan. And in a very tight election, this could be a deciding factor.
As you said, the last few weeks have been pretty frenetic in terms of what's been going on in the crypto space. Last week, the SEC, many were surprised by the decision to make the rules change that was necessary to kind of pave the way for these spot Ether ETFs. What was your reaction?
Inevitable. The SEC, I think, has been losing in the courts. They've been losing in the court of public opinion, and I think increasingly they're losing in politics. And so, we certainly saw that happen with the Bitcoin ETF. They were kind of dragged kicking and screaming into the approval of the Bitcoin ETF because of court decisions. And so I think that they knew if they didn't support and approve the ETH ETF, that likely the same thing was going to happen. And so I think that's also a very positive thing. But the SEC lost on Capitol Hill with the vote on SAB 121. They obviously lost in the Ripple case. I think that's Gensler has, I think, had a misguided approach to how to regulate this industry, and he hasn't done the work that other countries around the world have done to provide that clarity, provide rules of the road and frameworks, whether it's the UAE, Japan, UK, and we just haven't done that here in the United States.
Now, your ongoing fight with the SEC, it was largely billed as a win for Ripple over the SEC. It was a nuanced decision by the judge, so they said that XRP was not a token in the context of retail use. It was a different story for institutions. Where do things stand with that case right now?
So right now, what the courts ruled and the judge said very clearly is XRP in and of itself is not a security. That's everything to us. That was, these are technologies that should be allowed to kind of breathe and thrive and grow. And to me, it's again, the inevitable march of those technologies, the progress. The case between Ripple and the SEC, we feel like is largely resolved. Most of that went Ripple's way. There's one case that the judge decided when an institutional sales and something called an investment contract, because there's a contract around it, the contract could be a security. And it was deemed that those were unregistered security sales. And so we're in the final, let's say, half mile of that marathon. I think we'll see resolution hopefully this summer. The SEC asked for $2 billion in fines. My estimation is that'll be, certainly in the millions, not the billions. And I think it's, again, just a misguided to even come out and ask for that when there's no accusation or certainly findings of reckless behavior, fraud, or any of those things. The other settlements that they've done have been represented like maybe 1 or 2% of what's been involved. And so it's just kind of posturing, in my opinion.
So you're getting into the business of stablecoins. It's pretty crowded, $200 billion, the collective market cap, Tether, USDC, other players. Why now?
Well, look, I think if you look at where the market is going, well, you're right. It's somewhere between 150 and $200 billion today. I think forecasts are that it's going to be somewhere around 2 trillion to 3 trillion. So that's growth of 10 to 20x where it is today. So that in of itself is those are fun markets to be in, that they're growing quickly. The second is I think there's likely to be some shifts in market share. Today, Tether is by far the dominant. The U.S. government, for better or for worse, we can debate, but the U.S. government has kind of expressed concerns about Tether and how it operates outside of the United States, representing a U.S. dollar. And I think the U.S. government has taken the position, well, if you're representing a U.S. dollar, you need to be regulated by the United States. That isn't the case today, and I think there may be some shifts in how that market share. But look, overall, I think Tether will continue to grow. I think USDC will continue to grow. But I think there's a lot of room as that market grows for a Ripple-backed stablecoin.
And what does this mean for XRP? Do the two work in tandem, or does the stablecoin supplant XRP's utility?
Look, we are 100% behind the growth and development of the XRP ledger and the health of that market and that ecosystem. We think having a stablecoin built on the XRP ledger actually adds liquidity to the XRP ledger. We already have been using stablecoins in our payment flows. So this is just kind of a natural extension. We'll continue to absolutely prioritize XRP, but there's times and places where our customers want to see US dollar to US dollar using a Ripple stablecoin we think makes sense in those flows.
And when you say your customers, are you thinking about retail? Are you thinking about banks? Are you thinking about, for a time you owned 30% of MoneyGram and you were very focused on international remittances. So who is the customer that you're looking at when you say that?
All of Ripple's customers are B2B. We focus on selling blockchain infrastructure into financial institutions. Some that's on custody, that's on payments. We'll continue to really focus on being the leading enterprise-focused blockchain company in the industry.
Do you want to go public?
That's a good question. My pause is, look, today, sitting here, Gary Gensler is the chair of the United States SEC. I'm not really popular inside the offices of the SEC, as you might imagine.
Well, the NYSE president was in that chair yesterday, and she said that she welcomed applicants from the crypto ecosystem, IPO markets heating back up.
Lynn Martin, I think, is a progressive example of where we should be. That's not where Gary Gensler is. And so the SEC has to approve an S1. Going public in the United States for Ripple right now, I don't think makes any sense. I think Coinbase, as a public company in the United States, probably regrets that decision. We've looked at, would we consider going public outside the United States? That, of course, is in the possibilities. Right now, it's just not on our immediate term agenda.
Last year at this time, I was talking to Coinbase about their Wells notice and legal fight with the SEC. It was a much different atmosphere with respect to crypto firms winding their way through bankruptcy court, a lot of criminal trials going on. It just feels like a lot has changed since then. And part of that's the spot Bitcoin ETF. But how optimistic are you? And how much do you feel that the industry has shifted? Like, is there more positivity? Are people more optimistic? Do they feel like the bad times of 2022 are firmly behind them?
Look, I think we're in a more realistic environment. To me, it's not about, optimism versus pessimism, or realism. And look, one of the amazing things, and I say things like it's just a magical time to be alive, the crypto industry is somewhere around $2.5 trillion. That's despite the fact all the headwinds you just described. That's despite the fact that key players have been toppled and some people are in jail. That's despite the fact that we've had all these problems. This, to me, the inevitability of these technologies and where crypto is headed remains absolute to me. And I think we're going to continue to see that growth. It helps that we have some of that, I'll just say, cleared out and I guess, clarified and resolved so that we can move forward. And frankly, one of the things I'm looking forward to the most, as we talked about earlier, is having that full closure with the SEC, that all of the allegations they made are resolved. We're clear with the court, and we can move forward without that overhang.